Welcome back to BX. I am Dr. D, where I talk about all things mental wellness and relationship focus. And so today I figured I would start us off by titling this session as Fruit Inspection. So how often do you go to the grocery store and in the produce aisle you're going through your fruits, you're inspecting your fruits, you want to make sure you get a good buy? Or do you wait until you get home and you are unpacking your groceries and you're like, okay, this is a good time? Or maybe because life can be pretty hectic at times, we wait a few more days when you have time to do a meal prep and you learn that your fruits and vegetables, some of them have spoiled and are of no use. So with that, now this becomes problematic when this is like a perpetual bad habit, right? Like sometimes people learn fairly early on and they're not doing this, or it's not even happening as often. And then sometimes for some of us, it might take a little longer, right? We may always in a rush to go to the grocery store, always in a rush to leave, always in a rush to eat, and don't really slow down enough to really inspect our fruits. So it makes me think at some point you have to start testing, like, what are you learning from this? But more importantly, I even came to this whole thought, I was reminded of this when I was reading the Bible, and in the book of Exodus, I had been kind of stuck there in chapters 16 and 17. And so Moses is leading the Israelites. And these people, they had just come out of bondage. You would think that, time after time, God had been blessing them in the wilderness, which should have only been 3 days. But because of their ungratefulness, right, they constantly complained. They were like, Moses, you should have let us die back when we had food near us in slavery and bondage. And God was like really fed up with them multiple times. But while they were in this wilderness season, God was testing them. And like, I know for some people they'll read it and I'm like, well, what is all of that about? But God tested his own. He tested Jesus. And after he had said, like, he was well pleased with him, he still sent him out into the wilderness to be tested. So who are you? Who am I to think that we won't be tested? So what do we do in the test though? Are we mindful of like how we're being tested? If I can be honest, I recently was like, God, I'm ready for my next test. This year has been a year. And I recognized early on in the year, and I'll kind of get to this, but I didn't pass the test. Like, granted, I passed a test that was very significant. I had been studying for years, and I finally passed my board exam. Yay, that was amazing. I was so excited. But little did I know that I was in another test simultaneously. Like, I'm studying for this test and I'm in a test, but this test was relationship focused. And then I come out of that test and I did not pass that test. And I came out of it thinking, oh, I'm going to pass the next test. And I'm thinking, I know how I'm going to be tested. So much so I'm literally asking for the test. And then here I am. Just yesterday, I had a test that I recognized I was going to be tested, right? I knew this was going to be a test. I prepared for it. I studied for months. I was well prepared. I must say more prepared than I felt during past tests and preparations for past tests. But what happened? I didn't pass the test. I was devastated for a moment. Like, to be honest, I had encountered enough failures that I didn't feel like life was over. But I did feel like, now what? Man, so many people knew I was preparing for this test. So my my pride was getting to me. I even considered kind of lying about it. If I can be honest, like I was so embarrassed. But then I thought about it and I was like, God, what if this was your test? What if I asked for it, I knew it was coming, I thought this was it, and my attitude was similar to the people of the Israelites, right? Where I'm like, now what, God? Like, I should have done X, Y, and Z. I could have been da da da. Like, or do I get to a place of saying, what did I do wrong? What was it that I missed? Even during the test, how did I not use the strategies that I had learned during my previous tests? How did I mess up here? Where did I go wrong? So, as I mentioned before, when you go to the grocery store and you have this fruit, right? And you're like, I'm going there with the intent to buy fruit that is edible, that I can eat when I'm good and ready. But, excuse me, like many times, we're not taking the strategy approach even in the moment of when we should be. So in the store where we should be inspecting the fruit, making sure the leaves are green, making sure the color is right, making sure there aren't many bruises, there aren't many signs, red flags that let us know that maybe we should pass on this fruit. So earlier this year, I was also reading in the book of Matthew and Mark. And I believe Luke talked about the barren fig tree. Luke talked about it in a sense of a parable that Jesus was given, but Matthew, really liked that version, right, of the barren fig tree. So I remember reading it at the time and I was thinking, Jesus, this is around chapter 7, I think verse 21. Jesus is like, he's hungry. And he sees this tree afar off. And he saw that the tree had leaves. And so with the fig tree, what he knew and what I later learned from what I read was that when you see a fig tree and it has leaves, it's good to assume that it should have fruit. Now, in the Bible, it talks about this wasn't even the season for fruit, right? But Jesus cursed that tree because it had leaves, and when he went to go and inspect it, there was no fruit. I was like, what is going on? Was Jesus hangry? Like, was he frustrated because it was early in the morning and he wanted to eat and he was expecting fruit because it should have been on the tree? And when he saw the leaves and he didn't see the fruit, what I got from it was that the tree was deceptive. The tree was supposed to have fruit on it because when fig trees grow their fruit, they grow the fruit and the leaves at the same time. So I'm like, oh, wow. It made me really look closer at the relationship that I had exited out of. And that accident, I must acknowledge, did not happen because of me. It should have. I prayed for it. I prayed that God would help me to get out of it. But what I learned from that relationship and what my recent decision that I made concerning being in a situation that was not meant for me to be in is that you can pray about a thing, but you should really get to know it. And once you know it and you know how to deal with it, you make the decision and not allow other people to make them for you. So I say all that to say that wasn't what I had planned or how I planned it, but I want to say make sure you inspect your fruit. Always start with self. Don't be so quick to look at other people and start to judge and scrutinize them and pick apart, but always start with yourself. And then use wisdom when you're looking at the fruit of others. So remember that there's always going to be a test around the way. So stay ready.